15 years ago, I was struggling with depression on the edge of the Grand Canyon, considering suicide. What I learned through those lowest states is fighting against it actually created more pain and suffering.
His life could have ended that day, but instead, he began the journey that led to building companies, leading teams, and inspiring thousands. This is Greg Shack.
I tested what an initial promo run and got 500,000 people that engaged with the brand.
This isn't a story about business. It's a story about who you become when you follow the whisper of intuition.
Intuition is the confident whisper that is directing you, not the noise, it's not the chatter.
In today's episode, you'll learn how Greg rebuilt his foundation and how he turned rock bottom into clarity.
The biggest thing I learned is sometimes growth isn't about expansion, sometimes growth is about fortifying your foundation.
And you'll learn how to listen to your intuition more clearly, because sometimes the quiet whisper in your life is the one that saves it. Before we jump in, I want to take a moment to thank you for being here. This channel is small, but it's filled with high-quality people like you who care about growth, emotional intelligence, and becoming the kind of leader who's guided by intuition instead of noise and chaos. With everything happening in the world right now, emotional intelligence and being led by our intuition is more important than ever. If that resonates for you, just take 2 seconds and double check that you're subscribed. It really helps the health of a small channel like this. If you have entrepreneurs or professionals in your life who you care about, people navigating through growth, stress, leadership, burnout, or big decisions, please share this episode with them. A personal share will support our community more than any algorithm ever could. Let's be guided by your intuition and dive into today's episode. So Greg, give me a briefing of your professional background, where you started and then where you're at now.
Yeah, it's been a journey. I started training-wise industrial and systems engineering at Ohio State and then went to law school here in Columbus, Capital Law School. I intentionally going from engineering into law school was focused on patent law. To be around innovation, wanted to be around early and watch things come from nothing. That was always really exciting to me. At the time, Columbus didn't really have as strong of an entrepreneurial community. There were some grassroots efforts, but it wasn't anything like it is today. It was hard to find footing as a just entrepreneurial type person, but I would do some side projects, side businesses even while I was in law school. I still got licensed as a patent attorney, but I realized you don't actually get to be a part of the innovative process. You got to write at a desk all day. And so I got it to be around entrepreneurs, but focus my attention more towards real estate. Specifically, there's a part of the real estate industry called title insurance. And I realized instead of doing the billable hour, I could sell projects, essentially policies on $50 to $100 million projects and make a good living that way. So I focused my attention in that direction and then high-end commercial real estate, and then had a stretch where I was at a title company and had to write out a non-compete. So I had an opportunity to get into the entrepreneurial community and I just jumped both feet in. So I'm the type of person, I wanted to learn what it looked like to build a business. So instead of just focusing on one, I started 4 and worked with different partners, 4 different businesses.
How did that go?
It didn't, my educational process was phenomenal. Like I learned so many different angles, and from that perspective, I hacked the knowledge it took really fast to have the skills I have today. But success comes from hyper-focus. And if I'd been hyper-focused on one, maybe it would have been successful. But I almost went into it knowing I would fail. That like you have a 1 out of 10 chance of an initial startup breaking through. So I put some bets on some different opportunities and focused on my time and attention to certain places.
So, wait, if you got 1 out of 10 chance, but if you got 4.
Exactly. And if you stretch yourself to complete capacity to try and make one of those 4 work, but you're committed in all 4 places. I was still doing like consulting on the side to make sure I could make ends meet.
Because there was a guy, one time he told me he had 6 business. And I was like, what? I was like, how many make money? And he goes, they all help each other.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, but are they making money? And then he's not yet. I was like, so you have 6 hobbies.
Right. That's exactly right.
I'm not trying to put anyone down who's in that position. But it's...
What's the entrepreneurial phrase? Like chasing the shiny object. Entrepreneurs want to be in 10 different directions at once. And, it took maturing and wisdom to figure out how to hone in my focus. And so I still focus where, at least now, leading an organization that the commercial services at a large title company, we have 100 plus employees, and or non-disclosure agreements for some of the bigger commercial real estate projects happening across our region, which is exciting. One of the best teams I've ever worked with professionally. So it's like all this knowledge I learned venturing in all these paths I can apply now to this industry I had built subject matter expertise in. And then I still, being the entrepreneur that I am, have learned how to dip into places without disrupting my focus for my core pillar. So I think of it as like an
Yeah.
orbiting system where the sun is my core values. The major sort of planets are these different projects I have. One of them has to have this perfect sort of synergy to make sure that it can thrive. And so I'm making sure that's this commercial real estate aspect. But I'm working with a tech startup that has to do with EV stuff, and that was a weird tangent that came out of the real estate community, but it intersects with my daily life in a sort of, it's not like an intrusive kind of side project. It's now they're growing and doing great, had strong investment through their latest round. And you kind of ride the momentum where it is. It sounds crazy to have 7 things going at once, but I don't know it any other way anymore. And so you figure out how to succeed with that happening. You don't lose sight of what creates stability, which is a stream of revenue.
You were mentioning before when you started the 4 startups, you were about to say one had some validity to it.
Yeah, I think they all had opportunity, or I wouldn't have wasted my time. But the one had some initial financing, had IP that we had drafted a patent application that had strong, sort of just unique characteristics that could give us a competitive edge. We had a lease for some property where we were launching. We got post revenue. Everything was kind of building, but there was some leadership sort of infighting. Everything takes longer than you expected. In my mind, we bumped our burn rate a little too much by bringing on an employee too fast. And that's just, even though we were post revenue, we weren't at a spot where we could sustain that long term. And there's just a lot of lessons that I think of it as, and my biggest thing is you're in such a rush to try and get it to this place of stability that if you force it and jam it to try and get there, sometimes that's what creates the instability. It's, in my mind, we would have been better just treating it like it was a long-term 20-year project, not something we had to just hit the rocket ship to get it off the ground.
Yeah. I got a friend who, it's an app, and it's kind of, its growth isn't hockey stick level.
Mm-hmm.
And he's worried about telling his investors. He's to the point where he's not wanting to go VC level and try to go hockey stick level. He's, we're paying the bills. We're kind of like slowly growing. But, I think sometimes a slow burn is better than trying to hit this lottery winning business. I kind of feel like in this situation, bigger is not always better.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are always like wanting to hit that home run that's out of the park.
The biggest thing I learned is sometimes growth isn't about expansion. Sometimes growth is about fortifying your foundation. And if you're only focused on expansion, it's going to topple. More time fortifying the foundation, making sure your business mechanics make sense, making sure that your cash flow and all of your fundamentals make sense before you're taking the next big leap towards expansion. I think all those things make sense, even if investment's available. And, we were in a weird spot too. Again, this is probably me chasing the shiny object, but instead of focusing on one core business model, we were validating 4. Like we were building systems for other people. We were a small farm growing operation. We had the IP. We were looking at tech licensing. So there were all these avenues that we were actively engaged with. We had educational events we were getting paid for. And like we had plenty of sources of where we could get revenue, but instead of really honing in and being like, this is our cornerstone of how we're going to make ends meet and make this level, we were just expanding in too many directions at once. Learned. And building an app where you can limit your burn and make sure the systems are just operating. There's a lot of stuff with tech business models that give you a little bit of an edge.
Yeah. So Greg, you got a bit of a background in law, engineering, real estate, and entrepreneurship.
Yep, I do. Yeah.
Wow.
And that's funny when I'm meeting with people, I don't want to be everything to everyone because then you're like a master of none. But in most rooms, I know which hat I'm wearing. And I'm always fascinated when I get to with somebody who appreciates the multi-dimensionality in the way that you do, where I can just kind of be like, I'm wearing all the hats. The angles of attack, I look at things and here's how they intersect with each other.
So when you were doing engineering, what kind of engineering was that?
So it's systems engineering. I focused the best way I can analogize it is like an inch deep, mile wide in several different subject matters. So I got trained on mechanical engineering. I got trained a little bit on electrical. I did some computer science. I did some coding.
Okay.
But
Because I did mechanical and we would touch on systems.
yeah, and a lot of it ended up being like favor of business operations and how do you do process improvement projects and change management and those types of things. So one of my early jobs was at a tank plant in Lima, Ohio. So I got to do time studies, and one of them was riding around in a tank and getting to go see what it took to make sure they validated that these were safe to go out into hostile territory. So it was pretty cool to see that whole process of manufacturing a tank.
I was in college.
Yeah, it was while I was in college. And then I went to, it's so funny. I went from like manufacturing tanks to my next internship was working at like a children's hospital, and it was about process improvements
Oh,
and
yeah.
handling,
Yeah.
which was, I don't know, the diversity between the two of how do I go blow up anything with this giant tank versus how do I save a kid's life? I got the whole spectrum.
Having a background in processes is huge for a startup. I've thought about like how, I mean, really it's more of a cornerstone for an operations officer.
Yeah.
Like a COO.
Yeah. And I think the one thing I found, at least for my skill set, was try and break down a startup into such small chunks. Like, how do you validate as quickly as possible? It's like the lean startup's a great example of the topic.
Yeah.
How do you validate so fast so that you can discard and get to that core competency as quickly as possible? And to me, that's a systems engineering principle as much as anything. It's how you bring it to how you validate getting people's change management in terms of how you're moving customer expectations to try and drive it towards some new innovative product. I just think all of that is systems engineering at its core.
So where are you at now, like in your professional side?
Yeah, I really am honed in and focused on this large commercial title venture. So we've got several different people we're talking to across the local community that are big developers, large investment firms, large institutions that handle large commercial transactions regularly. So by closing a handful of those a year, you can make a pretty solid business. But by closing a bigger and bigger chunk, it's giving me more and more opportunity to build a strong operating system and free myself up for some of my other entrepreneurial opportunities. There's things that are curling in around it, like tech ventures that relate to title services, and this one tech venture related to EV stuff. But as opportunity, I have one that's I'm helping kind of poke along or support as much as I can. A guy that's building a cybersecurity for AI agents, and he's working with Ohio State now and has a pretty strong consortium and white paper. So there's some of that stuff that I think when I focus on commercial real estate, I do it in a way where it's like, all right, there's other intersection points I can be mindful of.
Tell me about what you were saying with the podcast and the direction that you're going and like the strategy you had. You mentioned that you hit 500,000 interests, or what was that about?
Yeah, I do have a mental health advocacy podcast. That was a big part of my personal upbringing. It's a philanthropic endeavor as much as anything right now. That there's been some people I've talked to that have had transformative experiences. I'm grateful for being a part of that. But for me personally, it was a chance to try and find intersection points with the community, and it's entitled Peaceful Revolutions, the focus being that in any moment you could find and connect with what brings peace with yourself and fulfillment in the present circumstances. And then like a revolution, if you find yourself disconnected, you could always cycle your way back. And there were 7 lessons I found that helped bring me from lower states of mental and emotional well-being towards more moments of peace and fulfillment. So I built the podcast around those 7 lessons. In interviews, I kind of use the Socratic method to step through those lessons. And then each episode is focused on a given topic on those lessons. So storyboard. But initial engagement was very well received. I mean, I did a small promotional run around mental health advocacy in May, and it reached several 100,000 people in terms of engagement and focus towards the brand. And then coming off of it, I tried to be intentional about attracting in people that would be good followers, and got 10,000 followers and had it running through Patreon, had a few initial subscribers, people signing up for a newsletter when I wasn't even like doing a newsletter yet, but I was testing whether I could funnel people into a newsletter. So I got the momentum I wanted to see just to validate some things. But in my mind now, it's how do I build the system to have it operate so that it doesn't take over my life? Because it's going to be a side thing. It's going to be something that I want to be integrated into my life long term, but it's got to be done in a way where it doesn't take away from what I enjoy doing, which is being around businesses, building businesses. I don't want to, I feel like there's a risk given the intention of peaceful revolutions that by turning it into a business too fast almost takes away from its.
Have you heard of passion to profit? It's basically like, how do you turn your passion into profit? How do you make money off of your passion? And I feel that sometimes there's too much pressure too quick for that.
Yeah, I agree.
Where it's just let your passion be fun. If it's a passion project, just let it be your side hobby that, gets you excited at your job.
aspects of it that, at least in my opinion, it makes some money and it does some things, but I don't want that to be the reason why I'm doing it. And sometimes when I feel my business mind take over, I have to back away. But I try to be intentional about doing one thing every day. And it does get to a spot that it's, if this thing can be successful in that way, who am I to stop it kind of a thing. So I want to be my own restrictor plate for it. But I also want to make sure I'm approaching it from a healthy, like, intentionality in how I'm building it.
So how did this start, the 7 principles?
Yeah. It really grew over time, but the biggest thing is my own mental health journey. 15 years ago, I was struggling with depression on the edge of the Grand Canyon, considering suicide. What I learned through those lowest states is fighting against it actually created more pain and suffering. The lessons built on life experiences and what helped me find ways to overcome my own challenges. In my experience, the lower states of mental emotional well-being, what most people's instinct is to do is to fight or like flee or trying to get away from it. The power is just in recognizing it, sitting with it for a minute and realize every time that you have that, what it's teaching you is that there's divergent paths. There's what you want, what you don't want in every experience. And so when I realized that, I kind of fell into positive affirmations, and I would journal my negative self-talk. And then anytime I had a negative experience, I would just kind of hit this list, and then I would make myself write the positive alternative. So if I said I'm useless, I would write down I'm useful. Positive twist list every morning and night, and it felt like you're lying to yourself. There's all sorts of like weird mental gymnastics, and even just reading through a list like that. But then I found after 3 months, like 90 days or more, that I would start to pick up experiences in my life that reminded me I was useful or that affirmed the things I had been sort of feeding to myself. That was like a crazy aha moment. That was like, oh man, this is powerful in terms of how you can build yourself and frame yourself. So that's an example of lessons in my mind is recognition. There's all sorts of different ways you can find patterns in recognition and realize this divergent path. The key is just, are you in a spot where you're healthy and you're good, or are you at a spot where there's some dysfunction and some things that need to be sorted out? And which path do you really want to go down from this point forward? And most everybody wants to lean towards the healthy. So it's like, how do you figure out what you need to do to actually get yourself there?
Yeah. Was the source of the depression stemming from lack of worthiness?
Not really. That's the hard part, is because I do feel like I've always had a really strong self-esteem. I was going through a time where my mom was battling breast cancer. I was in a relationship that wasn't fulfilling anymore at that point in time. I was at the tail end of my college career. I'm sure I was doing way too much drinking and escaping through other avenues. So it never really was like this sense of me not being worth it, but it was more so, the best way I can frame it is, I was captain of our soccer team in high school, all this stuff. And then it was, you get to Ohio State and you're competing against all these other people, and all of a sudden there's this like comparative mindset that can come up. Even though it's not like a sense that I would pull myself down, it was more so that like my mind got hijacked by that competitiveness of, you can do more, you can do this. So it wasn't like this, I guess it didn't start from this place of personal sort of lack of belief in myself. It was more so like this drive to always be trying to be better and chasing this sense of, and in chasing that potential, it started to erode from within. Does that make sense?
Yeah. For me, I was always I thought my thing was always leveling up, but
Mhm.
really my thing was not accepting the level I was on.
Yep, for sure.
Where the thing is, if I'm on level 10, I've been wanting to get on level 10 forever. And now that I'm here, I'm like, we got to get to level 11. Whatever level I was on I framed it as it was not enough.
Yeah.
So really my desire to level up was out of a scarcity of where I am is in lack. It's not enough.
Yeah. And so it's funny because that's my sort of next step in my learning journey was around humility. And in my mind, it was born out of the failures of the entrepreneurial endeavors I took, that it was, you get humbled to this point where you realize almost the sense of powerlessness, that even if you feel good from the inside, that chasing your potential outside of you, you're always looking for this reflection and validation from the world around you. And in my mind, like, success was that validation. Did it break through or did it not break through? That's a very binary thing. And so humility in my mind comes back to like essentially having a sense of serenity with the things you can't control so that you can take the action you need to do for the things you can. I don't control everything out there. And even though like I felt like I was grinding myself to the absolute extreme, I'm going to force this over the finish line. And I always had this belief that it was going to happen, but it created a sense
Yeah.
of dysfunction.
Yeah.
And it creates powerlessness as a result. The more you try to control the things you can't actually control, the more you actually are surrendering to your powerlessness.
Yeah. I've been working on this theory. I view it
Yeah.
as like circles, and then you're your own circle. And then if I believe I control something of you, which is maybe, people who are in a relationship, they believe I'm their source of happiness. Where really that's not true. Like we are our own source of happiness, of peace, of whatever. So the thing, or maybe I feel success if or validated by my dad. So then
Mm.
therefore he's in control of, so that's where like the circles are like overlapping, where he's actually in control. So essentially I'm giving up my true power.
Yeah.
So
I,
to me, it's not about needing to control everything. It's needing to know what you actually control and what you don't control.
I was just saying how much of it is like here, like between your head, between
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
see,
yeah,
it's like, it's actually way less than you actually think it is. But you can but your level of control in this world is actually pretty small.
yeah. And I mean, what you control is actually everything that's you, your
Hmm.
thoughts, your actions. I actually, to a point, sometimes I don't think you control your thoughts, but I think you control your reactions to the thoughts. And then therefore that's what ends up feeding them, or they end up basically not like withering away. So if I think something like, oh, I need my dad's approval, and then I constantly react to that by, I'm starting another business, I'm, you know, trying to be captain of the soccer team or whatever it is, that would happen to me sometimes. I'm reacting in a way. And then I'll realize, okay, I
Yeah.
like to dance, but before I would dance a lot to get people to see me. Now that I don't need
Yeah.
people to see me, I still like to dance, but I don't dance as much as I did because I don't need the validation.
So this is where my systems engineering intersects into all of it. Is my next sort of lesson was around grace, and the idea being that we have these habitual patterns, and these pattern loops happen for everybody all the time. And I'm a big believer that like hurt people. So if you're in a pain loop, you're going to
Yeah.
perpetuate pain, and if that gets locked into somebody else. If hurt people can hurt people, it stands to reason that healed people can heal people. So if you're sitting in your healing with somebody, now you're opening up and inviting somebody into that. And if they, again, it's up to them to react, but if they react from a place of healing, they're going to invite more and more of that to their experience. And so grace to me was less around, Christianity, like amazing grace, but more having this sense of forgiveness and honor for where you've come from, regardless of any sense of worthiness, like giving it its due credit so that you can live now in a place of stability for wherever you are. And if it's not exactly where you want it to be, have grace for that. But it's with recognition and humility, you can now create more control from the present if you're in a place of grace. Because if you're not, you end up falling victim to these same patterns, these same loops. There's a really good book called The Power of Habit, and it talks about how habit change really only happens at an activating event. So you're right. If I have a thought and it creates this belief of I need external validation for my dancing, what you're really looking for is a sense of love
Yeah.
within. Then your activating event is different. You're no longer dancing for the external validation. You're dancing because you love it. So
Yeah.
it's knowing what those activating events are and being intentional that as you're going through a habit change, you're doing it from this place of grace is what empowers you to be more present.
Are you doing it for the love of the thing? Or are you doing it because that thing gives you love?
Yeah.
And
And in my opinion, there's nothing wrong with doing a thing because it gives you needing that love. If it's coming from a sense of desperation, if it's coming from the sense of like lack of fulfillment, receiving love from the outside world is a gift.
yeah, being dependent on it and the only source
Yeah.
of love, that's when it starts to get toxic.
Yeah. And so I built the logo for Peaceful Revolutions to be a drop of water going into a pool. And I think of that like in the present moment, any given present moment, we are the drop. And the pool is life experience, peace, fulfillment, whatever it is. So what are you actually connecting with at this present moment? And if you're doing it for just being mindful of where you're at is a huge step in the journey. Having that sense of self-awareness at any given point in time is, I think people can live so disconnected. But once you reconnect, even for a moment, you feel it. It's different. In most instances, it's uplifting. It's liberating. So people gravitate towards yoga and meditation and prayer and all these things. But in my mind, the journey, especially for a lot of entrepreneurs, very ambitious people, you're always forward looking. Like they're the type of people that are willing to charge into uncertainty. They're not walking the other direction away from it. Like they're running toward it. And that mindset, in my experience, is see, but it's also if you get so caught into the journey into the future, it's a way you disconnect from the present. So I can be bad
Yeah.
here because I'm going to be better there. And there's, in my experience, more peace in the being and the becoming. I'm here now and I'm becoming. And that's okay. Every moment is an evolution from the
Yeah.
being to the becoming.
Yeah. That was a hard thing for me with GripMat, was appreciating the successes that I had in the present, where I was constantly thinking, okay, how do we leverage this for more? Right after I got off stage of Shark Tank, actually, I don't think I told anyone this before, but I had a side interview of me. So there's the Shark Tank episode, and at the end, you walk out and then they do a quick, so what do you think? And then you'd be like, whatever. But then after that, they had me go in a room and do an exit interview, basically. And they were kind of playing around with this idea of, we could do like a little exit interview and use that as content. They never used it on anyone. They didn't use mine, they didn't use anyone's. But in that exit interview, I think I was crying because how stressed out I was. I just got the deal that I wanted, but I'm in this exit interview crying because I was like, I just couldn't receive it. And now recently I've been asking myself, like, can I receive a great life? Can I, or am I going to constantly like seek for nitpicking things of why I can't receive this right now? Like this Christmas, I got some family coming to Europe, and I noticed my mind is almost like craving for something negative to happen. So I'd be like, see, I knew they were going to do that. Whereas, can I really just accept this is going to be one of the most amazing experiences I've had with my family, of just accept this amazing trip, accept this amazing life. And then I kind of look back on it and I'm like, okay, like my life is pretty amazing right now. And in any situation, sometimes people view me as, oh, the Shark Tank guy. Of course, everything's great. But during COVID, I escaped to Hawaii, and it was amazing. It was one of the best experiences I had. Also, it was one of the most stressful because it's COVID. Everyone's transitioning into online. Everyone's, you don't know what to expect the next day. And I got a business I'm trying to push forward. And so there's still a lot of stress. But I remember I was talking to my accountant and he goes, yeah, you probably couldn't be stressed in Hawaii. And I was kind of taken back because I was like, actually today I've been stressed the whole day over this accountant issue. But really, to his point, it's like, could I accept that I was fully in Hawaii and just, could I actually let go of the stress?
Yeah. So in my experience, stress is a disconnect in the present moment from either what we expected to receive by this point or what we believe disconnects us from the trajectory of where we feel we're intended to go. So in the present moment, stress is essentially an indicator of, I feel like I'm off the path. There's some dissatisfaction. And in my mind, if you bring grace into the experience, then you can let go of the where I came from. If you bring faith into the experience, and faith in my mind isn't accomplishing some idealized outcome. Faith is letting go to have this sense of acceptance of uncertainty in the present moment. And if you accept that sense of uncertainty, that growth is available in all directions, that we can have everything come to fruition that allows for more acceptance in the present, regardless of what it is. It could be a terrible experience, but if I'm coming at it from a place of acceptance, by the time a good experience comes around, I can come at it with a place of acceptance, and that tends to bring way greater satisfaction. So that sense of presence in my mind is, you're wedged between grace and faith at any given time. And if you can experience both, that's what really, you become stoic to the things that you're never too high, never too low, but you're also, that place of acceptance allows you to bring in and really experience life as it's coming at you rather than trying to manipulate it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. That's the whole idea of a vision.
Yeah.
The point where you're trying to like manipulate what it'll be. I've been writing a lot about the balance between having a vision and also being in the present. The key balance is, one, present is always top priority, but with the past and the future, we're going to Spain next week or in 2 weeks. We had to buy a plane ticket for that. So I had to plan for the future. Also, I've been to Spain before. So is there anything I know from my past that I could use for that trip? The thing is, if I'm thinking, I believe when I'm letting emotions get tied into it, that's when it starts to get toxic. If I'm actually looking at facts, that's okay. But if I'm thinking of the past, of, well, last time I was in Spain, my girlfriend said this, and now I'm like making side comments and bringing things up about the last time because I'm upset about it. that's where it's
Yeah.
starting to get toxic. Or potentially, if I'm worried about the future, because what you said, the uncertainty, now I'm feeling
Yeah.
fear because I feel uncertain that something may happen that I
What
didn't
if you
plan for.
Do you subscribe to the law of attraction type concept that there's a way that how you are in the present moment is either ebbing or flowing or gravitating in a certain experience?
Yeah,
And
I
I'm not to
believe.
this,
Go
I was
ahead.
just the spot.
Flag.
Yeah. I'm not to the spot that I think you believe something and it automatically becomes true. But I think what you bring in the present moment affects your subconscious, affects who you are to allow for certain things to continue to exist in your experience. So if I'm in a state of depression, it can start to feel like quicksand. And what I'm drawing into the present moment is more depression and more depression. If I have a stick that helps pull me out of quicksand, for me, that was positive affirmations. That helps me pull into a different gravitational realm. That's, in my opinion, just a healthier mindset. Now it's the same thing if I'm going to Spain and I'm bringing in a sense of fear in the present moment, I'm more inclined to anchor the sense of fear into my life experience and planning
Yeah.
for any future event. But if I'm more curious rather than judgmental, I'm going to be more open to good experiences happening. I'm going to be more open to let's see where this can go. If I feel like a vision is a calling and I'm destined to drive something into fruition, I'm going to do it with a certain degree of confidence that you can have otherwise. If I feel like I'm doing it from a place of manipulation, I feel like I have to control the stepping stones in order for this thing to even exist, you're going to feel different tense experience around it. So
Mhm.
I don't think of it as like the law of attraction is this magical formula to just kind of poof and things appear. But I do think it's a measuring stick of what am I actually bringing in now? And the more I'm bringing in the things I want now, I'm essentially weaving a web, carry with me into the next thing.
Yeah. Essentially, law of attraction is you're attracting what you are in the present moment. It's not an activity. It's actually what you're being right now. Like what you're thinking of doing, what you're planning on doing, it's what your being is right now.
Mm-hmm.
So if your being right now is in scarcity, then therefore you will simply attract more scarcity. Where people want to be is they want to skip to abundance. The middle step is simply seeing where you are is enough.
Yeah.
Where
I think
everything,
that is abundance to
anyone
me.
who's, yeah, it's actually the very first step of abundance, but I feel like that's typically skipped over a lot. Where everyone's, oh, I'll feel abundant if I have millions of dollars, I drive an expensive car and got a new house. Where the thing is, actually, everything, the car you drive now, the house you have now, whoever you're dating or not dating, they're enough right now. The Wi Fi you have right now is enough to talk to me. The phone you have, the camera you have, it's enough. You don't need a new
Mhm.
one. Like it's
Yeah.
doing the job. It is enough. And then you can actually see, oh, really, I have more space in my house than I need. It's
Hmm.
not the perfect fit. It's actually, I have more to a
Hmm.
point. We're in scarcity, but we're actually in waste in other ways.
Yeah. And once you kind of accept where you are, I think of this sense of most people think of growth very hierarchical. Like I'm trying to drive towards a point at the end of a pyramid or whatever. Where in my mind, the strongest, if you go back to mechanical engineering principles, there's the tension and the strength of circular and spherical models is exponentially greater. So if you think of that in terms of your mentality, your focus, if I'm thinking of the fact that my job is just to strengthen the core of who I am in this moment, and growth is available in all directions in this kind of spherical model, then I have this crack in the foundation. You don't have this, I have to keep anchoring down while I'm driving upward kind of mentality that people bring. And so that's where I think people feel this sense of lack is I'm driving towards a point and there's only one point. So how am I going to get there? In order to get there, I have to really strengthen this foundation. And how do I have enough resources to keep strengthening this foundation, to keep building in this other direction? All those things create this sense of insecurity and create this sense of, in my opinion, again, it helps pull you out of the present moment. It helps bring you to this place of lack, where if you're focused on here
Yeah.
now is enough, even if here now is more than enough, and I can figure out growth in all directions. And, we see people who reach like astronomical levels of success. That's what they're doing, whether they realize it or not. They're so disciplined in what their practice is that doing something every day creates such a growth model that it's those rhythms to life that allow you to be where you are, and that's good enough, that builds on itself. And again, from my personal mental health journey, being enough wasn't really the concern. Feeling like I had enough or feeling like there was a gap of where I could get to or was supposed to be was that sense of striving that disconnected me from allowing to feel that sense of freedom in the moment. I have way more than enough.
With the project that you were talking about, peaceful revolutions, you said there's 7 pillars.
Yep.
What are the 7?
Recognition, humility, grace, I think is like sort of the front phase. Yeah,
Recognition
just
of what?
it's just as simple, like recognizing where you're at now, a sense of acknowledgement.
Recognizing your thoughts?
Yeah, recognizing your circumstances, recognize your thoughts. It's a certain level of awareness. To me,
Okay.
consciousness into your experience.
Okay.
Recognition, humility, grace, and then presence, faith, and freedom. In my mind, what we're talking about now is freedom. Like, how do you have this sense that I have way more than enough, that I can be fulfilled here now? How do I find this sense of abundance? Like, all of those to me are very high vibration. And it was intentionally done that there's, in my mind, an emotional ladder that this walks you through. So it's hard to get the freedom if you don't find recognition. In my experience, somebody's on a step of the ladder in their experience at any given time. So I built the model in a way so that it could help connect with anybody at any step of their journey. But to me, the 7th lesson is just about peace and what is peace. And peace is available to us in every moment. It's really hard to find peace if you don't have a sense of freedom. You stumble into it periodically, but it's always there. And so once you're in a place of presence and freedom, you can let go enough to be with it regularly. The more you can find peace with yourself, it supercharges things. It creates the sense of breakthroughs. Like, I've had, ever since I've been on this journey with peaceful revolutions, it has kind of been its own like alchemy for myself. Because I'm a big believer that if you're a leader of an organization, who you are permeates into the identity of the company in some sense, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that's just sort of the nature of leadership and the nature of organizations. So if what I want to bring with peaceful revolutions is the sense of peace and fulfillment for the people I'm connecting with, it became more and more imperative that I actually connect with that. So that as I'm connecting with other people, I'm connecting with them at that place of peace and fulfillment for themselves. And my interviews walk through the journey so that it ends every episode talking about peace and what actually brings somebody to that place of peace. And how does it evoke habits that help you find your way back to it regularly? It's like an outlet that's always available. You just have to plug into it.
Yeah. I feel that, I like the idea of what you're saying with peace. The Vipassana meditations I do, they talk about being equanimous, which is like equal, like
Equanimity.
level.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
they'll talk about basically like craving or averting. It's kind of like on the opposite spectrums, but also both of them end in suffering. If you're craving a lot, you could end up in a lot of suffering because you might not get what you're craving. If you're averting a lot, that could end in a lot of suffering. And the way I think about it is it's almost like if you take a stick and then if you like bend the stick, it's going to snap back. It's going to kind of go like this a little bit. So if you're like pushing if you're really craving happiness, I need happiness, like it's going to snap back, and all this effort that you're pushing into happiness, you may end up into a lot of sadness. So like we were saying with the stoicism of being more neutral, I kind of feel that there's a negative like perspective of, oh, so you're just like neutral all the time. You're not really happy. You're just kind of, the thing is there's a difference of being neutral and in peace than being numb. So you're not numb.
I think a lot of people think of peace as, a slow bubbling river or something. You think of this like serene kind of setting, but versus at peace with the supernova when a star explodes. Like, that's a cosmic event that has an exponential force. And when we think of it in that sense, it is our judgment of what a supernova is compared to a babbling river. If you relinquish that sense of judgment in a cool way, peace is available all the time. And it may not always look like sunshine and rainbows, and it may not be a slow burn. It might be a podcast episode that goes viral. Who knows what's going to be for you in those moments? The sense of peace isn't, an expectation of what peace is. It's a being. Does that make sense?
Do you think it's a place of acceptance?
I think acceptance is critical to it. I think of acceptance as much as a grace type of a step in the process, that if you connect with it that early in terms of accepting into the present moment, then that invites in more opportunities for peace. But if you don't find that sense of freedom, if you don't find that spot where growth is available in all directions, on some level, you're closing off the possibility for peace because you're expecting a certain outcome in order for peace to exist. So for you to get to a spot where you're just anchored and you're here, like, you kind of become, I hate to say it, but you're not impervious to circumstances, but nothing can take that peace away from you. Even, there's people who went to terrible, tragic deaths that I probably think did it with a certain degree of peace.
Yeah.
I think that's the part of life that if you can figure it out, it's going to make the highs so much higher. It's going to make the experience so much more fulfilling. It's this level of depth in your experience that, at least in my journey, makes all the suffering.
Yeah. True peace is where I can hear my intuition the most clearly.
It doesn't feel like intuition in the sense of a to-do list item. It's, oh, I'm where I'm supposed to be. And I don't know where to go, but I know it's going to be good.
Yeah. I've been thinking about that with the idea of the intuition, where I think it speaks in two different directions. Where one direction, it may be just like your Google Maps, where it says 500 feet, turn left.
Yeah.
Like, it might be record a podcast episode, talk to that person, quit the job, and you don't know the full journey. And then I think other times it's almost flipped, where it'll be like, here's your North Star, just go in that direction.
Yeah.
And you're like, but I don't know how. You're like, just find a way just to go to that North Star.
Yeah.
Nope, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, for me, the North Star has become peace with myself. Being peace, as long as I'm bringing that in the present moment, then I'm going to bring it in the next. I'm going to bring it the next. And even if the circumstances don't look how I expected, it is weird how, like, I have things happening right now in my life in weird sort of serendipitous ways that are bucket list items I remember setting intentions for years ago. Like, I walk out the balcony we have a 2-story thing, and I remember setting a vision board when I was, probably, again, it was probably coming out of the depression and just hearing about this idea of law of attraction. But it was like this big open loft and this beautiful, like, big room. And it's not verbatim the picture, but it's like I walk out my balcony going down the steps every morning, and that's my view. Like, we have this big open living room area, and it feels vast and open. And, it's just, I wrote Peaceful Revolutions on a vision board 10 plus years ago. And it's not even close to the same concept that it is now. But I do think once you find that place of peace, those types of experiences do somehow find you. Like, the things you're called for, you're just so true to yourself in a way that it's inevitable that, like, you're like, oh yeah, that came from capital S self. Like, this came from a deeper place than just wanting to make money or wanting to accomplish some end. And I think as long as that due north is maintaining that sense of peace with yourself, I do think it's crazy how the world kind of reorganizes for you to find the best version of yourself in the process.
Yeah. As I was saying, like, your North Star is peace. You probably didn't have envisioned for a while this, the whole program that you have now. Probably wasn't very clear, but it was just part of the journey, I always envision it as my intuition is my compass. You're just like going through the journey, and then this is part of it, which is exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's a fascinating concept.
Greg, what would your definition of intuition be?
Intuition is like the whisper, like the confident whisper that is directing you. Yeah. It's this confident whisper. If you silence yourself enough, you can hear the whisper more clearly. But it comes from this, at least in my experience, this truest version of yourself, this truest sense of your direction.
Can you tell me a story of when you did listen to your intuition?
Man, I've got a ton. I think probably the biggest one, at least for this stage of my career, I mentioned being involved in commercial real estate. And I was at a job where I was closing large transactions, and I was doing really well. And I heard, like, the work-life balance was incredible. There would be some weeks I had 3 emails in total, and you could close and do all this major stuff. And I got approached about an opportunity to move into a leadership role, which in my mind I knew meant taking on a team rather than being solo. It meant giving up all of the free time I had to commit into trying to create something different out of a challenging circumstance. And it was hard. It was a really hard decision. And then, to make it even worse, by the time I was ready to accept the leadership opportunity, the original place I worked leapfrogged the offer and made it almost like too good to refuse. I remember it being like a fork in the road moment of, okay, which direction am I going? There's 2 things that stuck out to me from the experience. One of them, my dad, who's pretty wise, he's a systems engineer himself, but he said to me, choose to be happy. Whichever choice you make, just choose to be happy wherever you go. And so then that helped me kind of, like, quiet my mind enough. And I chose the path that was probably to any person out there would be like, you chose the harder path. You chose a path that is going to create more stress, is going to create more challenges, is going to do all this stuff. But it was a chance for me to play around in the space of building a company culture. And I wanted to try and anchor within a company the sense of ease and freedom. And how do you do that with people where you're not, again, manipulating it, but cultivating a culture where that's just people feel liberated in that way to be the best version of themselves and be fulfilled in their circumstances. So it was a playground for me for a lot of the stuff around peaceful revolutions, but within a group and a more kind of closed group, but within the business environment that I'm comfortable in. And so I took that path, and again, everything about my brain was screaming not to. It was like, you could make more money, your life could be less stressful. But there was this part of me that was like, this is who you're meant to be. You're meant to learn what you're meant to learn going down this path. And I'm sure of it now. I'm 3 years into it. I see the sort of evolution and where we're at and opportunity on the horizon. And I know I'm where I'm supposed to be. Yeah, it doesn't mean it's easy every time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. I realized for me that sometimes in that fork in the road, or sometimes when, like, I was reflecting on some business situations, and I'm like, if that would have switched, my life would have been, much better. Thing is, one, that didn't happen because it wasn't supposed to happen. Two, whoever I would have been, if I would have made more money or it would have worked out, my self-worth wouldn't have changed. I'm still the same person. Like, I'm just as valuable. And my life is, again, like, me accept my life is amazing. So me accepting, like, where I am is exactly where it's supposed to be. This is the path I'm supposed to be on. And this, that second guessing whisper, I've been watching it come up.
That's
So,
cool.
Greg, do you have a story of when you did not listen to your intuition?
Yeah, I don't know if you are familiar with the like 4 stages of growth where it's, you're unconscious and incorrect, then you're conscious and incorrect, then you're conscious and correct, and then you're unconscious and correct. That's the way I think of it, is intuition happens at both ends of that spectrum.
Say the 4 again.
Yeah, and I'm gonna chop it up.
Unconscious and correct.
Yeah, and there's a similar
unconscious
and incorrect. And
then
there's a similar, if you're familiar with it, the Dunning-Kruger effect, cognitive bias, where people with low ability in a specific area overestimate their competence, while those with a high ability tend to underestimate theirs. And it's a pretty interesting spike and then a dip, almost like this, I call it this valley of humility. And then you have this slow curve where competence builds. So if you're early in anything and you feel highly intuitive about it, you're probably wrong.
Yeah.
So early in my entrepreneurial career was definitely where I had those intuitions that I probably shouldn't have followed, but that's the only way you learn. And it's probably, in hindsight, good that I did rather than just do nothing. But there were times, early in, I think of like higher ground agriculture, whereas like I knew exactly what I felt needed to be done, but I would stall. Not
Higher ground agriculture is the name of the business that you were talking
the
about.
the name of the business that was the large scale aquaponics and had all these different business models. And so I guess, to your original question, are you asking when I had intuition that I wish I didn't trust or didn't follow through with, or instances where I was incorrect with my intuition? You know what I mean?
When you heard the intuition, but you didn't follow it.
Yeah.
You heard the whisper and you're like, nah, I need to take the money.
Yeah. In those early phases, I could feel the things slipping. But again, it was that place of arrogance of, I'm going to make it happen regardless. Not really trusting in the fact that like everything about me was saying, slow down, take a breath, take a beat. It was everything in my personality and sort of from this place of arrogance was power through and you will force this into existence.
Yeah.
But in those moments, like when you really want something, you feel like you'll do everything to go get it. But when your intuition's telling you it's not for you or not now, those are the hardest moments in my mind to just be like, okay, I'm going to dial back and I'm going to see how this plays out.
It's funny when you really want something, I gravitate to the idea that to get it is done by forcing it.
Yeah.
Which a lot of times it's not. It's actually the opposite.
Usually it's by letting go. Usually it's by getting to a spot where if it's meant for you, you attract it in, you give it less pressure. I almost had these competing intuitions. Like it's on one hand, it's like, you were born for this. Like you were the guy who was studying Thomas Edison and John Rockefeller when you were a kid. Like you love this stuff. And there's this other part of that was like, everything about this looks like it's not going to work out. Like, what are you doing wrong? Or how can you course correct this? And it's like almost this pressure of like, how do I bend this back towards who I felt like I was supposed to be? Where what I really needed to do was stretch my learning curve. I needed to get through the fact that I had no idea how to be John Rockefeller or Thomas Edison and give this as much time as possible to get through my learning curve rather than just steer and force in a way that it worked against the business and the endeavor. But yeah, it's intuition is a funny thing because it can evoke a tremendous amount of confidence. You have to be mindful of what's truly intuition versus what's you pressing.
Yeah. I guess these competing voices in your head, do you think that one may be something else?
I think it's all self, like it's all me, but I think that when I think of intuition, again, it usually comes from this like subconscious state.
Yeah.
Since if you're not careful, I do think there is a place that you can mistake confidence as intuition. If it's confidence that isn't really eroded in a strong foundation, it
Like
can become
arrogance.
arrogance. Yeah. It's a
Right.
false sense of pride.
Yeah. It's still coming for you. I mean, to that point, maybe part of the ego.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Like you've been studying Rockefeller your whole life. Like that's a bit of a ego
Yeah.
bump.
Yeah. I think humility was a huge step in my journey, and a big part of it was that Dunning-Kruger effect and the fact that it just takes a long time to find expertise. It takes the hours. It takes the hard challenges that you have to learn from. But it's okay to also have pride while you have humility. And I think that's a big part of equanimity is a lot of people think of them as antonyms, but pride itself is not inherently evil. Pride coming from a place of arrogance can be. It's where a lot of the falls happen. Being proud of the life you have, being proud of the circumstances you're in, being proud of the effort you put in, your ability to take a risk, your ability to come back from a failure
Be a
with
proud
grace.
father.
Be a proud dog dad as they're wandering through in the background.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That you have a son or a daughter now?
I have 2 sons.
Two
I
sons.
got a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old.
How has your intuition changed while having kids?
So when I think of intuition, I don't necessarily think of it as only professionally. And I came across recently that was like, when I was a dad, especially like in early stages, I knew exactly what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to care for them. They were supposed to feel safe. They were supposed to wrestle and play and grow. And my job was to pick up all the toys between here and the front door. And that was it. And it was just to be a dad. And so for me, my intuition personally has been steered towards that. And like, I think most people overthink parenting. 80% of parenting is just showing up and being there and having, so being present with my kids is super valuable to me. And even with all my ambitions and professional endeavors, nothing stops me from being here for my kids, with my kids. That's the intuition I continually follow. So even when I had earlier this week a $38 million closing and all these demands on my time, like it was the first time in probably my 6-year-old's life where I had to be like, I'm sorry, dad has a really important work email. I'm going to step away to just get this. I tell people professionally, like I'm like when it's 5 to 6 o'clock, like that's my dinner time with my family. I'm unavailable. Like I'm intentional about this is like unencumbered time. And so my intuition, if anything, is guiding me towards protecting that aspect of that because I understand how important my family values are to me. And so if I don't honor them, I'm disconnecting from the truest version of myself. And it's even intentional in how I proposed to my wife. I told her, I wanted to get married before I started my first business because family was a priority for me. She went through my early entrepreneurial challenges. She had to see it firsthand, being up against the failures and being up against the challenges. And to her credit, she stood by me through all of it. So my intuition is more value it so much, and I have to stay true to that. And if I don't stay true to that, everything else starts to erode otherwise.
Yeah. So the young Greg versions that are out there potentially listening, what would you tell them about the value of intuition?
I would tell them to meditate. I would tell them to practice that self-awareness, and don't meditate to create silence either. Like meditate with the chatter. Be the self that, because if you're always meditating just to create silence, you don't get experience of just observing the whisper when it happens. The more you can find that sense of self-awareness and that presence, the easier it becomes know when you hear it and follow it. That's the second thing. Is 1 is just getting to a spot where you can hear it. 2 is getting to a spot where you can have the courage to follow it. And I don't even think of it as courage because it starts to become second nature. But like I do something every 3 months to get me outside of my comfort zone. And I think that's the habit is if it makes you afraid, in a lot of instances, there's something on the other side of it that you're really wanting to get to. Knowing that, fear is kind of this enemy of intuition. And if you can make habits of how you break down fear to start taking the steps when the intuition calls, you become more and more attuned to it.
Yeah. Fear is almost like the noise that's drowning out the whisper.
Yeah,
of the
absolutely.
intuition.
Totally.
Cool. And Greg, where can we find your Peaceful Revolution?
Yeah, it's good. So major podcast networks have at least the initial episodes. Patreon, Peaceful Revolutions on Patreon is where the first season is launched, and the first full episodes are available for subscribers. And then Facebook is where I did an initial social media promotional push. So if you find Peaceful Revolutions, I'm going to be honest, as of today, not actively posting, but it is still part of the plan.
Okay, cool.
I appreciate you.
Cool.
Yeah. What's next
Awesome,
on your
man.
journey? Where's your intuition taking you?
Making this podcast. So I do these meditations called Vipassana meditations where it's like a 10-day retreat, and it hit me where I wanted it. I kind of had the whisper, I want to start making content, but I was like, let's focus it on business, and I can just interview my other, business friends about how they use intuition throughout their journey. And so right now the focus is, what I was saying is sometimes you get the North Star, and then sometimes you just get the, hey, turn left in 500 feet. My hey, turn left in 500 feet is just make episodes. Just make, 10 episodes. We're going to make 100 episodes, and just get used to making content. Don't worry about what's the business model. Can I make a product? Am I going to sell a course? Am I going to have a community? Just right now, just double down on making content, because also what I feel is that a lot of times, especially in entrepreneurship, is that the order of operations gets confused. And because if we're on step B, the next step is step C. Don't need to be worrying and thinking about step R, because that's when things just, we spend too much energy on step R, and step C doesn't get executed, and we'll never get to step R. And I've seen so many founders, the company ends up falling apart over who gets what when they made no money. That's what I'm saying, is they're not on the next step. What I'm focused on is, okay, what is the next step? Right now, it is just 500 feet, turn left. That is just make content. Right now, my goal is to make 100 episodes, and then we'll just see where we're at. The North Star is we're focusing on the topic of intuition. Really, the way I feel is that the way society is that we are in basically a capitalistic format. And with that, there are potentially negative side effects. So if I can support the morality of entrepreneurs, then therefore it can help our society. So the thing is, the way society is with capitalism is the core of it really inflames and supports greed. It really supports like a winner and a loser, not rising tides where we all win. There's a lot of positives with capitalism, but there are some negative side effects that need to be addressed. And I think with conscious entrepreneurs, that we can avoid that.
Yeah, there's a couple things you said that really stuck with me, but when we were talking about fears, I've been a big believer for the longest time that greed and poverty are just the same fear. It's the fear of not having enough.
Yeah.
When you realize that, that's why they build together. If greed is building within a culture, so is poverty. I think it's an aspect that leaders are the central nervous system, because they're the ones influencing large organizations and their own cultures within those. Dissipate from within the culture is going to help dissipate within society. So finding those central nervous systems to make those changes is impactful. I think it's definitely, you're on the right path.
Cool. Awesome, man. Great conversation, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was good.
Wasn't that amazing? I get so energized by conversations like this. Thank you for liking, subscribing, and sharing with those who you care about. It's one of the easiest ways to support a small channel like this. It helps us reach more leaders like yourself who want to grow in emotional intelligence and intuition. Before you go, I'd love to invite you to my Saturday newsletter, a 5-minute weekly read to sharpen your intuition and strengthen your emotional intelligence. It's where I share all my deepest insights, both personal and as an entrepreneur. Click below on the top link in the description. Let's keep this momentum going and check out this next episode. It's one of my favorites, and it's the next step in your growth journey. Just one click away. I'll be there waiting for you.